السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا محمد رسول الله وآله وأصحابه ومن والاه. ربي زدنا علما ولا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Wallah, please increase us in knowledge and do not allow our hearts to deviate from truth and guidance after you have shown them to us. اللهم افتح مسامع قلوبنا لذكرك. Oh Allah, please open the hearing channels of our hearts to that which reminds us of you. Ameen. In the time we have left, inshallah ta'ala, I'll try hopefully to do two things. One is to continue in the subject matter of the Sharia and axioms and the maqasid and the qawa'id, juristically speaking, that, as we have said, are very beneficial to us. Not only beneficial to those who are expert in law, and those who are court judges, and those who are muftis, but also they are very helpful to us in our regular daily lives if we pay attention to those, and they will help in a very special, beautiful way. They will help organize our lives in ways that are balanced, in ways that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let me ask you a question. Let's begin with a question, inshallah ta'ala. Regularly, some of you would know that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam admonished and highly recommended that when we perform wudu, ablution, and that when we rinse our mouth, that we should do that thoroughly, as well as when we also cleanse our nostrils, our noses, that we should do that thoroughly, almost exaggerate that. So that's what he taught, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And that's a sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ramadan is here, walhamdulillah, and then you're going to perform salah. You're going to perform wudu, ablution for salah. What are you going to do when you wash your mouth and you rinse your nose? I told you what the text teaches. What are you going to do? Yes, please. Okay. You do not exaggerate that, you do not emphasize that as when you used to do that outside of Ramadan, because it is Ramadan. Why? Because it is Ramadan is an answer but not complete answer. Pardon me? Because you're fasting. Okay, so of course it is Ramadan, and Ramadan means you're fasting. Pardon me? You what? I'm sorry. Because if you emphasize the rinsing of the mouth or of the nostrils, you might end up swallowing water. You might end up swallowing water. And what happens if you swallow the water? Your fasting is invalid, is invalidated. Now, look how Sharia is very consistent everywhere. This falls in what of the rules that we have learned? No, not that one. He said the same thing. No, that's not. It doesn't follow into that rubric, into that part. Pardon? Yes? No. Sayyid Iqbal, don't just enumerate what you know. Enumerate the one that is consistent with what we're talking about. So that's why I'm asking you to think, alhamdulillah, through this example, think logically which one fits, which rule is this? Yes. No. Well, how could it be لا ضرر ولا ضرار? You could look, keep looking. Keep looking. You're there. I mean, this is one of the sub or the corollary axioms of that one, but it's not that one. You see, note that it should be consistent. It should be an example of the axiom that says درء المفاسد أولى من جلب المصالح. درء المفاسد أولى من جلب المصالح. Why is that? See? Now think about it. Avoiding mafsada, avoiding harm or evil or mafsada or and so on, takes precedence over acquiring benefit. So what is here the mafsada and what is the benefit in this example? What is the benefit first? What is the benefit in this example that we mentioned? Pardon me? Exactly, the benefit is to, first of all, practice the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as he commanded. Definitely, even if we don't know a lot of details and the consequences of that, well, that's a maslahah, that's a benefit. To follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is beneficial because it's a hasana. Because it's a hasana. And certainly of the things that it will also imply, that it is cleaning the mouth and the nose and removing stain or removing dirt and removing microbes and all of those. That's all maslahah, that's all benefit. And that benefit is liked and is well established in the Shara. That's a benefit. Well, let's do that. Why not? Because what is the mafsada in this case? The risk of violating the fast. Violating the fast and the probable risk of violating the fast is a mafsada. It's a mafsada. It's a harm. And therefore, when we weigh them both in accordance to the rule, we should not have to analyze and think, this. This is the rule. It helps you and it is justified rule and it's proven rule. That, well, in this case, it tells me, if that rule, even if I didn't know the text, I would come to that conclusion myself on the basis of this rule. And therefore, I will not emphasize and exaggerate my washing of my mouth or my nose. I do that just, very simply, very carefully and quickly, and not all of that, which is good to do, but that good is overridden by the probable risk of losing deliberately my fast. You see, here it is. A beautiful example coming soon, inshallah ta'ala, as we are receiving the blessed month of Shahr Ramadan. Let's say I have to perform ghusl. One has to perform ghusl, taking a bath, because one is in janaba. Because one is in janaba, spiritual defilement. As you know, janaba is all adults. I'm in janaba. But assume I'm in some circumstances that usually most of us are not nowadays. But I'm in a circumstance where I have no private space to remove all my clothing and wash and do my ghusl properly. And ghusl is obligatory after janaba or after haida or after for the woman and so on. I have to do that. All of you would know what to do, I suppose, in this situation. And you cannot be alone. So what do? First of all, what is the maslahah and what is the mafsada? What is the benefit? The benefit is to perform most, to comply with the divine command. And to comply with the divine command is, of the wajib, is hasanat. By definition, complying with an obligation is rewarding by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's a maslahah, that's a manfa'ah, that's a benefit. But that benefit does not come alone. If I do that, I'm going to expose my awrah. And exposing awrah deliberately is haram. And that's a mafsada. So, applying the rule is dar'ul mafasidi awla min jalbil masalih. So I do not perform ghusl as long as that situation is there. I do not perform ghusl as long as that situation is there. So if I have no time until salah, which is obligatory, then I do perform what? Tayammum. Then I do perform tayammum, even though water is there, everything is there. But I'm in a situation where this mafsada comes with that maslahah. And if it is not removed by any other means, and it is there, then I do not perform ghusl. Because warding off harm takes precedence over drawing in benefit. It's an application of the rule also. Okay. I want to have fun. A young brother or a young sister wants to have fun and they want to play. And they want to play soccer, or they want to play man or basketball or something else. But to do that in some circumstance, for example, one has to wear, let's say, one has to wear shorts or something very short, such that for the man it's above the ankle, above the knees. Or for the woman it's something that shows the part of her awrah, part of her legs or so. To do all of that, to have that legitimate fun of playing kaza is manfa'ah. It's manfa'ah it's some maslahah. It's easy, it's good, it's fully relaxing, releasing the pressures and all of that. It's good and it's halal. But if I can do that only in this way, is there a mafsada in exposing my awrah again, or part of my awrah, or her awrah? Yes. So the rule is dar'ul mafasidi awla min jalbil masalih. I will give up that benefit because having that benefit is outweighed by the harm that ensues spiritually, morally, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is more than the benefit I acquire. Again, we want to watch something. Watching something, basketball game, watching something, an event, which is halal otherwise, and maybe even mustahab. Let's say I want to take my children, it's very hot, and the little children, they want to be refreshed with some fresh water. You take them to some parks where, for children they have those fountains, but there are a lot of people there. in the summer with their parents, all dressed or many dressed, improperly, awra, exposed. Well, I'm not doing that. There's nothing harmful. I'm not doing that. It's good for my children. They need to play. They need to relax. It's all true. That's a maslahah. That's a maslahah. But it comes with a mafsada of exposing myself first as an adult to that. And that's a clear mafsada. Or exposing my children to that and to become relaxed about doing that themselves. True or false? It's a fact. That's a mafsada. And I know many people fall into this. But those who know. درء المفاسد أولى من جلب المصالح. The rule teaches. So that warding off and preventing and removing that mafsada, that harm, psychologically, spiritually, morally, to my eye and to my qalb and my children's eyes and heart, takes precedence over getting refreshed and cool. I can do that at home and turn the shower on, cold water. You go ahead and refresh yourself. If we care for our deen, if we are murids of Allah Azza wa Jal, if we truly desire Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the rule, the fiqh rule is هكذا. درء المفاسد أولى من جلب المصالح. And here it is applied not in the court of law, not in a fatwa. You can yourself make that decision when you know this rule and if you understand it at some level well, inshallah ta'ala. One of the qualifiers in this rule, and of course the more you repeat it, the more you learn about it, the more you'll understand it well and how to apply it. Of the conditions to apply well this rule is that when there is maslaha, benefit, and there is mafsada, harm, this rule is not applied when we know well quantitatively. You know what I mean by that? When we know well quantitatively that the benefit far outweighs the harm. If the benefit far outweighs the harm quantitatively and qualitatively, then we can still do that. If there is some harm, but that harm is much overweighed, much overrun by the good that is in it, in the Shari'i sense, then I can still do that. And of course, if even the harm or the evil far outweighs the good, then that's even more obvious that I should not do that. When I said that rule applies when they are almost the same. They're almost the same. If one far outweighs the other, then it is clear what to do. Right? يسألونك عن الخمر والميسر قل فيهما إثم كبير ومنافع للناس وإثمهما أكبر من نفعهما. Again, this understanding is from the Quran, including when Allah Azza wa Jalla says about taking intoxicants, drinking alcohol and intoxicants, and gambling and so on. He says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, tell them there is, in doing all of that, there is plenty, abundant of harm in that. and some benefits. And the harm outweighs the benefits, he says subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. That's why when things like that, it is obvious that we have to excuse me. We have to avoid that. But if we're dealing with situations in which the benefit excuse me, the benefit and the harm are equal, or they're approaching close to one another, then the rule is درء المفاسد أولى من جلب المصالح. Keeping away from that, because averting harm takes precedence over attracting and acquiring benefit. Please keep that in mind as a rule in life. I give you an example. This is a different rule. A well-established example that is given pertaining to some of this other next rule is if there is a munkar, if there is an evil that is committed, and committing an evil and the presence of an evil is something evil, and Sharia clearly teaches us through the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to do what? To do what? If there is a munkar, to stop it, to remove it. من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره. That's the command, that if there is a munkar, we are to change it. And of course there are levels of changing and all of that. But they say, if there is a munkar, and to change it would produce a greater munkar, or a similar munkar, similar evil, it will produce, it will generate, if we do that, it will generate same munkar, another munkar, or even worse. They say, then don't stop that first munkar, let it be. Why is it? Logically, because you want to remove harm, you increase the harm. Because if the harm you're going to cause is equal to the harm that exists already, so we have doubled the harm anyways. There's two harms now. And if it is not the same but worse, then it has become 3 or 4 times or 7 times more of a harm. And that cannot be, because that is inconsistent with removing the harm and providing order and peace and security and all of that. And therefore, and in this case, of course, the first harm is harm. Not removing the harm is also harm. Which one of them is worse? Which one is the worst in this case, as you mentioned? That harm, the first harm, is worse than not removing harm, not enjoining what is right and forbidding that is evil. In this case, if it produces worse evil. So we leave it as is. Subhanallah. So if in a house, in a household, in In life, in work, in outside, one is faced by the dilemma of making a decision to help or not to help, to remove evil or not to remove evil. If by proper gauging, Allah bless you, if by proper gauging and evaluating we come to that conclusion, then leave it as is. If I, for example, somebody is hurting somebody physically, just physically because they're angry, they're trying to fan their anger out. And if I make the decision, and I know most probably if we do that, this is a simplistic example, if I'm going to go and help, then that person will be further angered and then will kill the person. Are you with me? That exists actually. Left to that would be just beaten. Intervening, the person would be killed. Which choice must I make? Let it be. Let it be. Subhanallah. And the rule is called الضرر الأشد يزال بالضرر الأخف. الضرر الأشد. This is part of لا ضرر أو لا ضرار, or the corollaries of that rule. الضرر الأشد يزال بالضرر الأخف. The greater evil may be removed by committing the lesser evil, if that's the only way to do that. So the person committing the lesser evil in this case is what? Is unfortunately to let that poor person being beaten. That's an evil. But it is less than causing that person or leading to that person being killed. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So if something is at home happening or in a community or whatever, of something improper, even in educating ourselves or our children or our families, and we know by experience, by intelligence and by observation, that if we intervene and if we stop this, that person, knowing that person and the character, that person is going to go do something worse. So let it be. For now. Let it be for now. So this is a golden rule that is to be applied and understood before that. An example not from here, the other examples were not from here. Another example that I found very interesting here. Assume we have relatives, same family. Some relatives are very rich, and some relatives are very poor. And they are in a situation where this very poor person need help to survive and to live. Imagine this situation. And there are no other easy avenues to help them. Some of the ulama, rahmahullah ta'ala, they mentioned this example. Then in this case, the court, the judge, or the, whatever is responsible for law and order, in this case, in the proper procedure and so on, that they would force the rich relatives of the poor relatives to give them help to break through this hardship. يفرض على الأغنياء الأقارب الأغنياء من مالهم لإعطائها للفقراء فرضا They're compelled to do that. Wait a minute, that's my property. Nobody can force anyone to dispense of their property without their consent. That's another rule. What's happening here? Compelling the person in this case is a harm, is a mafsada, is a darar. That's darar to the person. Who is, remember we said, very rich. The poor person who is in dire need, if not satisfying that need, if not removing the need, what will happen? They might starve or die or weaken, or it's too greater hardships on that person. So they're both hardships. Which hardship is worse? The hardship of the very rich given like 0.001% or less than something. And the relatives between them, they can put together and they give something that suffices that, which is, relatively speaking, let's say discomfort or whatever, even if you call it evil, shar, hardship, that is far outweighed, that's a lesser hardship than the hardship suffered by the poor person, if not given help at all. And yes, the law says, sorry, unfortunately, yes, and that's part of living together. That's part of course, Iman and Islam and alhamdulillah, society caring for its members together and so on. And those who are closest relatives are those who have more responsibility than those who are outside. In Sharia, simply also because relatives do inherit from one another. They do inherit from one another. If those aqarib died under some circumstances, that, the surviving would inherit from them. So what if those who will inherit can help those from whom they would inherit, would not help him under difficult circumstances. So helping them takes precedence over asking others to help them if they have the ability to that, if they are rich enough and have resources enough. Well, alhamdulillah, because some of us human beings, we might have all those resources, but because of greed, because of selfishness, and other reasons, we do not want to do that. We don't even want to give, a penny for that. So, subhanAllah, in Sharia law, this is an example in which ارتكاب أخف الضررين لدفع أشدهما. It's an example of, it's okay, committing the lesser of the two hardships or evils in order to remove a worse one, a greater one. And keep that in mind. So sometimes we must be in a situation, this is an example, tons of examples in which you think it's unjust, unfair to me. Think about it. Yes, maybe in some example it is totally unfair. But if there is an example like this, in which you or I are in this situation, and I am the very rich, and you are the very poor, and you are my relative, and you're told you have to, no, actually, it's very logical, very moral, and therefore very shari. Right? And then you can extend that. That's why in a community, in a Muslim community, zakah is collected, whether you like it or you don't. You see? Giving of your zakah is construed as what? Technically speaking, or just shallowly speaking, it is a darar. Why should I give from my wealth? Why should I give from my wealth? Because there are in the society those who need that. And it is taken from Muslims to Muslims first. From Muslims to Muslims first, because they are the relatives, the closest relatives. You don't go to non-Muslims and say, you have to give them. Muslims first. You have to give them. Because of this rule. And then, of course, in the context of a non-Sharia compliant environment, we practice that also. It's practiced all the time. They take taxes from you whether you like it or not. And part of the use of the disbursement of taxes goes to whom? To many things including, including welfare systems and including helping, the people who don't work and all of that, and providing grants and providing money for them. Where does that money come from? It comes from what you are obliged to give. Because this falls into also this category of taken from me is against my liberty, against my freedom. But this is an example where your freedom. You have to give because we told you to give. The state said you have to give. Because they they argued that doing that is, yes, it's probably hard, it's probably harmful in some way, but it is less of a harm than leaving the needy and the poor not taken care of and not helped at all. So in food or in clothing or in education or in health care and so on and so forth. Health care, who pays for health care? When governments have full health coverage like Canada and other things, where is the money from? From the citizens. By taxes, by Kala. Because that would pertain, some people don't know that of course, but that would pertain to accepting to go through lesser harm to remove great harm. Aina. وهكذا. If a person excuse me, Afwan. If a person is a doctor or an engineer or a mufti, but they are they're not they don't have the credentials. They don't have the credentials. And they studied and they kada, but they don't have the credentials. The law says you must not allow them to practice. You must not allow them to practice, even in secular law, which is in this case a lot of Sharia in secular law, lot of Sharia. Most people don't know because they think Sharia is just this or that, few, three things. How do you apply this principle that we mentioned in this case? To deprive them of practicing is harmful to them. As they perceive it, it's harmful to them. It's going to stop them from doing something by which they earn something. But if you don't stop them, most likely what will happen? More harm to the community, to people. An architect will build a dam that will collapse, a bridge that will collapse, a doctor administers medicine that will, instead of saving, it will maim and kill, and a mufti, imagine a mufti would give fatwa that will causes lives to be lost, and mayhem, as it is nowadays, especially when you go to the digital realm and the internet realm, who's giving fatwa, who's teaching, who's telling this is right and this is wrong. Sometimes majhul, unknown. And the rule is, again here, that we have to, the law, the Sharia says you have to prevent the greater harm by having sometimes to accept a lesser harm. Amen. Any question up to this point? Amen. All right. And this other rule, this other example that I mentioned, by the way, also, it's the same almost, very close to one another. It is also included in, including in the qaida of removing the more general harm by having to commit the more specific harm. That falls into also the other rule, because there is also the concept of يعني يتحمل الضرر الخاص يتحمل الضرر الخاص لدفع الضرر العام يتحمل الضرر الخاص لدفع الضرر العام. That we may accept, and we do accept, the harm that is at the specific level, at the localized level, more specific level, in order to avert harm at a more generalized and more global level. Like in this case, one person's harm versus the community's harm. Which one should we protect if we have to choose only one? As a community. Keep that in mind. And it has applications at all levels of our lives, family lives, work lives, and all sorts of circumstances outside of the realm of the law, of the courts, in our lives. Keep that in mind. I'm going to do something that has specific harm, and another thing that has more general harm. I cannot make the choice of doing something that has more generalized and more global harm. So to accept the specific harm, to save the generalized harm. I accept, for example, we have to accept, for example, a harm to one Muslim or to 3 or 4 Muslims, accept harm to fall upon them for something in order to avoid the harm that would fall, if we don't do that, that would fall against the entire nation or a country or an entire community or the deen itself. Right? If the actions of some would hurt the deen and the freedom of the deen and the sanctity of the deen and the truth of the deen, by allowing the few to, in their way of understanding and interpreting, allowing them the freedom to do that, when that would lead to a harm that will include a greater number of Muslims, or a greater quality of concern, such as faith itself and the deen itself. I must not allow that. I must stop that harm that will be generated against 1 or 2 or 3, in order to save an entire community, in order to save the value of the deen. That is the order of the law. أين ارتكاب الضرر الخاص لدفع الضرر العام, which is a corollary of the previous rule, ارتكاب الضرر الأخف لدفع الضرر الأشد, لأن لأن الضرر الخاص أخف من الضرر العام. الضرر العام أشد من الضرر الخاص. أي نعم. Yes, please. These are Shari'i rules. These are Shari'i rules. The Sharia cannot tell you can do something and then it punishes you for it. So these are Shari'i rules. That is, you can do that or you have to do that. For example, if a person, as we said, is a mufti who is, careless, Sharia requires that you stop them from issuing fatawi. That's a command of the Sharia. And that means you are rewarded when you do that. When you stop them from issuing fatawi like that are harmful at the greater level. Another example, a murderer. A person who murders, who kills, when proven to be beyond reasonable doubt and all of the details of the procedure and of evidence is proven beyond reasonable doubt to be guilty, what happens? Capital punishment, maximum punishment under these special circumstances. Why? That's harm. That's harm. To kill life is harm. To kill the killer is harm. But that harm is necessary on average to avoid that person like that and others like that to do the same, and therefore many more will be killed. Many more will be killed. And killing that person in that sense, by law, is law. You're not punished for that. That is you, meaning the law, in this case. In other words, we're not vigilantes. You don't take law in your hands. That's by the law. And that's very important. Yes, please.
I can't help but think of so could this apply, for example, there's like a sheikh who is calling for like a music and then debating him is that doing the lesser harm, like initiating like the scholars of the past took it.
No doubt about it. Beautiful, alhamdulillah, polite example, I would say. Yes, that if a teacher, if a mufti, if what is called a scholar, again, has opinions, and that's why we say muftis, has opinions that are very dangerous, that are in accordance to the other greater experts of knowledge who fear Allah Azza wa Jal and who are saintly. They do know that is wrong, yet many people probably don't know, and they do assess the probable consequences as well, and they're doing that with sincerity and with this depth professional knowledge. I say also add professional because it must be based on facts and on evidence and objective and not subjective and all of that. Doing that becomes their duty. Becomes a duty in order to avert the probable consequences, the negative probable consequences of that person's views or opinions in society. Because it would lead to, as we spoke of the objectives, to violating one or some of the 5 kulliyat, affecting negatively faith, the deen itself, or nafs, life, or aql, or ird, or wealth, mal, at different levels. And if that's so, then of course it becomes obligatory on those who are capable to do that. And that would become fardu kifaya, of course. It becomes, in the Sharia and fiqh, what is called fardu kifaya. It is a collective duty as long as some of the people who are able and capable are doing that in a way that is sufficient, then the others don't have to do that. It's fardu kifaya. Part of, in this case, part of the legitimate amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. All what we're saying here is some of the special rules pertaining to amr bil ma'ruf and nahy anil munkar. Yes, please. MashaAllah. Again, this is a practical lawyer's question. That, of course, some of these things are matters of assessment and evaluation. Each case is taken, I would say, would be taken separately by those experts and analyzed, because it's not only number 40 versus 60, it's also the type of harm that is going to be gauged. Is it the type of harm to faith versus life versus ird versus aql versus wealth? And actually there is hierarchy in these things. Which one is it? And they're going to evaluate all of that in as much qualitative and quantitative ways as possible. And then they're going to make an ijtihadi at their level assessment. So it's not only in terms of numbers, in terms of the type of mafsada or the type of maslaha. For example, the mafsada to life weighs more, as a factor, weighs more than the mafsada to wealth. For example, the mafsada to faith weighs more than the mafsada to life. But again, there are other considerations. The consideration of daruriyat, hajiyat, tahsiniyat. This now we're entering into some details. If it is, for example, generally we say the component of faith takes precedence over the component of life. But assume this. What if one is in the following situation? Should we, in order to protect faith, all of us die? Then there will be no one to practice faith. You see the point? There will be no one to practice faith. Everyone dies. Then faith is gone. Then faith is not left. In this case, because in this case now the component of life becomes daruri. The component of life becomes daruri for faith. The component of life becomes daruri for the preservation of faith. And therefore, in some instances, life takes precedence over faith if the component of daruriyat versus hajiyat is taken. If we're dealing with a daruri element of life versus a haji element of faith, then the daruri, necessary element of life takes precedence over the convenient element of faith, for instance. So there are many things that are considered. It's not just, but there are ways, there are beautiful, logical, practical ways by which those capable expert scholars, not imams, not mullahs, not just regular people, not just a student of knowledge, not a 4-year guy, not even what is called, most people here nowadays call scholars. I always use the word expert scholars, and I have to add nowadays saintly expert scholars. Those may be capable of making these decisions. And they are very rational, and very objective and very practical and very moral and very balanced and very beautiful. There are those whom Allah Azza wa Jal has given them that ability, but that's a tremendous, humongous load and task, as you probably would appreciate. Yes, please. Yes, please. Excuse me. That's a very good question. That's probably what they're trying to do. Indeed, that's probably what they're trying to do. And when we're trying to do something, whether a person who is trying to do that is able to do that or not, that's a different issue. A person who is trying to do that, who is arguing that way, first of all, is he capable and able to do that function? Number two, even if they are, did they get the right answer? Or maybe there is another answer. Or maybe in some issues it's so complex, depending on the circumstances, that there would be differing opinions. On this question, I don't have time, but somehow just today in our class of the Hafad, those the Hafad of the Quran, I give them special classes. There was a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I dealt with this issue at their level for about half an hour or so. No, inshallah ta'ala, so some other time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And that's, of course, that's the law of blasphemy, the law of apostasy, and that in order to give a valid answer to that, one has to talk about a lot of things in the Quran and in the Sunnah, and the Shari'i methodology, and in the precedents of the law of Islamic law, and use the circumstances, the current circumstances, and it's a very, very, very complex issue and very difficult issue. Some people are very quick to give answers nowadays, but it's a very difficult issue. But as I said, subhanAllah, just today between Asr and Maghrib, I talked about that aspect of the text when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, لا يحل دم امرئ مسلم إلا بإحدى ثلاث الزاني الثيب والنفس بالنفس والتارك لدينه المفارق للجماعة, as Imam Bukhari and Muslim related, and then we commented on that, inshallah ta'ala. So basically, probably yes, in general, that's what they're trying to do. That's what they're trying to explain. But I don't know. I didn't read what they said. I don't know what they said, etc. I don't know so many things about Pakistan. So I don't know whether I could tell you even, Allah Ta'ala, or I can even opine whether they are right or wrong. Allah Ta'ala alam, but keep that in mind as well, inshallah ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.